responsibility for every unchecked moment, for every time it was easier to ignore than to call it out for what it was.
Every not-so-funny joke. Every unfair stereotype.
Every blatant injustice, no matter how big or small.
Every time I remained silent.
Every time I explained away police brutality. Or turned a blind eye. I take responsibility. Black people are being slaughtered in the streets, killed in their own homes. These are our brothers and sisters, our friends, our family. We are done watching them die.
The Black community vomited it back
and
up.
as they
saw
should.
right through it.
As they should. I would too.
And being the mom of a Black child, the reason I really don't like it is because if you tell my daughter the world's systemically against her, then if she ever falls down, there's no agency to say, like, why did I fall down? Let me pick myself back up. Let me reapproach. It's, I'm a victim. And as a victim, you're fundamentally disempowered to change anything.
Right.
So part of me wonders if this isn't some sort of conspiracy theory narrative of racism to keep people of color down by telling them they've got no hope. I've often wondered that. By making them
What do you
angry, which then alienates those of us who, where there is injustice, would have previously got involved, and now we're kind of like, I'll just stand here because I'm paralyzed to know what to do. Like,
Right.
I don't want to be a
Shorello
savior, but I don't want to get involved. Like, I don't know. There are real moments like this that you're talking about, right? Like doing the work for the Hispanic kids to make sure they have the resources they need.
Right.
It's like it gets taken away, so their opportunities get taken away.
Exactly. I mean, when I started
Greetings.
kindergarten, I didn't
Farewell.
speak a single
Light
word of
bless
English.
you. Go with honor, friend.
I'm the child of Armenian immigrants. Yeah, so I grew up, with my parents speaking Armenian. That was the first language I learned. Now I need help with Armenian because my English is way better. But what they did in the elementary school I went to is before any of the classes started, they had me do this test to see where I was with like my English skills. They realized I need English as a second language, like an extra curriculum tacked onto what all the other students were doing. So what the school did was realize, okay, she's having trouble with English. We need to get her caught up. So there's going to be an extra program that we're offering to her to get her up to speed. And that helped me tremendously, along with watching Sesame Street and learning English that way as well. But the school didn't just give up on me and say, she doesn't know how to speak English. We don't know what, maybe we just don't grade her as harshly, right? So just let her flail, but give her the grade so she can pass. And that's not helping,
I remember watching
Well
you
met.
on Patrick Bet
Safe
David.
travels.
I didn't even watch Patrick Bet David. He was so far right, but somehow the friggin' YouTube algorithm flicked it up in my feed, maybe because I had been vocal at the time about leaving California. And you articulated everything wrong with California, and that was the moment I discovered you. And I found you online and have been, devouring your content since then, but nobody can express this, not Elon Musk. Nobody expresses what's wrong here from a governing perspective like you do.
Be careful.
So I'm just going to say I grew up here.
See you around.
Me too.
Okay. Nothing was crazy like this, right? The homelessness, crime, the advocating for the medicalization of children, advocating for late-term abort, like I'm never gonna put a limit on, like what about 8 months? No, still no. Still no. Like what happened to legal safe where? Come on. Like let's hear it. Come on. Like this madness. And I personally feel that I have lived through it, and Gavin Newsom is
Yeah, for sure.
Go. Take me from the top to the bottom. No one does it like you do. And the concern is that it goes from California to a federal problem.
Yeah, that should be a concern. And in fact, some of the failed policies that we've implemented here, unfortunately, have been exported to other states.
Right.
And I'll give you a quick example, because we have literally squandered $25 billion on the homeless issue over the last 5 years. And I say squandered because there was recently an audit that wanted to see, like, okay,
Hey there.
where did the money go? Because
See you
over the
around.
last 5 years,
Safe travels.
we've spent all this money, but homelessness has exploded. Homelessness has increased by 58% since 2013. Okay, so obviously this money isn't going where it was supposed to go.
Right.
And so it turns out that the state government started giving out these grants not during, but after 2020.
Okay.
And the grants they would give out to were these nonprofits, newly formed nonprofits in many cases, that were tasked with helping the homeless. Except some investigations found they weren't actually helping the homeless. They were giving their executives some massive raises, lots of gifts to the staff. You know, there are videos of some of these nonprofits literally going to Skid Row and handing out crack pipes.
Right.
And that's
Help
their
you find
idea of
something?
helping the homeless. So the Project Room Key expansion happened.
Farewell.
And some of these nonprofits that were tasked with converting old hotels and motels into apartment buildings for the homeless didn't finish their projects, abandoned their projects after getting tens of millions of dollars in these state government grants. And I'm furious about this. They stole from us. And so when you have that experience here, right, in California, and you see how all of these politicians who have all of these friends, who run all of these nonprofits, who stole our money, when you see that, it's really hard to have these conversations about how we need to increase taxes on anyone. You know, increase taxes on the rich, increase taxes on corporations. Generally speaking, I'm in favor of everyone paying their fair share.
Right. Me too.
But I'm less interested in having a conversation about taxing people more when I've seen what is done with our money. On a federal level, a lot of it goes to the military, right? Not even the military, not to the men and women who risk their lives for this country. It goes to weapons manufacturers, defense contractors, Boeing, Raytheon, you get the point.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the starting salary of a soldier in our military, and it's like $20-something thousand, considering we're spending close to $1 trillion a year on our defense department. It's insane, right?
Cops don't make much either, Sue.
They don't, right? And if you want quality cops,
Pay 'em.
you need to pay
Train 'em.
them, exactly, but also defunding the police makes no sense when you need better training. Better training costs money.
Right.
So all of these things, all of these ideas that I used to subscribe to on the left have been implemented and they have failed. And I'm not interested in having a conversation about keeping this gravy train for a select few going because it's the, in their view, moral thing to do. Like, no, this is not moral. All of the problems that you guys said you were gonna fix, you have made worse. They
How you
refuse to
doing,
recalibrate, and it's infuriating.
Why? Okay. Why?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not done with California, but you've said refuse to recalibrate.
You
For
be
the
careful,
life of
man.
me. I remember Michelle Obama, let's move.
Mm-hmm.
Health is an alt-right issue now, which I want to get to a bit later on, but I remember the Obamas were anti-gay marriage. Then we got them to, okay, gay marriage.
Right.
And now it's, let's medicalize children and put them on off-label cancer drugs and chop off their boobs. And the Obama administration is trying to lift any age restriction on it. They tried to pass that through.
Did they really?
Yes, Google it. Obama,
I did not know that.
The Biden
Oh,
administration.
Biden, okay.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
The Biden administration has moved to remove
Mhm.
any age limitation on the medicalization of gender dysphoria.
Mm-hmm.
I have no problem with you changing all that stuff. I just want your brain to be developed.
Mhm.
And it is irrefutable that cancer drugs and puberty blockers will greatly impair a developing human body, in particular, not just your bones, your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Your brain. It says on the box of Lupron, brain swelling. Like, are we insane? And I'm watching Michelle Obama at the DNC, who I loved. Not gonna lie to you, I loved her.
Mm-hmm.
And she's advocating for that. And I'm thinking, how did you get from anti to here? There's no way you've made that quantum leap in your ideology. Is there?
Well, I think what happens is
What is happening?
every action by one side leads to an equal or even more extreme reaction. And so I think what has happened, look, I'm not necessarily on board with completely banning all of those treatments. Like, there are cases where someone who is a minor is suffering from gender dysphoria that's so extreme, and they might be suicidal as a result of that, right? I think those cases are actually very rare, much rarer than the left is willing to admit.
That's what the data shows in the CAS report.
And so in that case, I love that you brought up the CAS report. They would reject the CAS report altogether.
They do.
Yeah,
and they
do.
cite the WPATH files.
I know.
Which Michael Schellenberger just dumped all of that data out there,
Yeah.
which is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I feel like the US is kind of behind when you look at European countries.
Stay
and,
away
you know,
from the
what happened with
voodoo.
Tavistock in the UK, for instance. There are areas where irresponsible treatments can be doled out to kids who might not actually be suffering from gender dysphoria at all. So there's concern about that.
Would you medicalize them?
I
That's the question. It's not, wear a dress and call me Penelope.
right.
It's blocking their body while it's developing. It's taking off parts of their body.
Right.
That they may grow up and be like, actually, I
What
want
rooms
my
in here?
boobs back, or I want my penis back, or like 8 to older.
Yeah.
That's my issue with it, not transgenderism.
What I think is actually the most toxic part about all of this is how this area of medicine has been so politicized.
Yes.
And so doctors who want to be more cautious are, you know, pretty viciously harassed as like, oh, they're gatekeepers. But like, no, they're the medical professionals. And they're trying to make the best possible decision on behalf of their patient. They're not just trying to be gatekeepers. They're trying to provide the best possible treatment for someone who may or may not suffer from gender dysphoria. My problem is once you politicize this area of medicine, then pressure plays a role, right? Pressure on the doctors, pressure on the individuals carrying out some of the studies. There's actually a lack of research. I know people want to pretend like there's a ton of research behind gender-affirming care for minors. There isn't.
It's limited, and the
It's very
length
limited.
of it is limited, which is what Hillary Cass addresses.
Exactly. And so, look, I have no ill will at all in my heart for transgender people. In fact, I have a lengthy career of defending them from being discriminated against, and I will continue to do that.
Same.
But I do think that there's this issue of, you know, I think it really does go back to nonprofits again. I know that sounds crazy and conspiratorial, but it does.
It's not though. That you're absolutely right. First of all, let's not negate that it has a compound annual growth rate as an industry of 10%. It's the drugs are making billions of dollars across the board. These children have to be on this medication the rest of their lives, so it's extraordinarily profitable over the long term. Then people say, well, how much is it really happening? And I heard Abigail Schreier tell Bill on Real Time, she's like, since I've written this book, Irreversible Damage, tens of thousands of children have been transitioned. I was like, well, that's absurd. That's not real. It's true. It's true.
Through medications.
Medication. It's the medicalization piece, by all means. And these children and people who have advocated for it, like Dr. Drew was on, he's like, well, for some people, it can be life-changing. I said, but did they medicalize those people you know? I don't think so. I'm like, that's what, put on a dress, and I will call you whatever you want. Cut your hair, wear makeup. And I get that that's controversial. Everyone's like, reject that. I'm doing it. If my kid wants neither, you want to explore it, explore it. Run through whatever you need to run through, and if it nets out here at 18 or 21 or 25, and then you want to change your body when your brain is developed and your bones are developed, by all means. Yeah. But it's the fact that now you've got the CAS review, and all of these different countries in Europe pull back, and the U.S. doesn't recalibrate.
Right.
To tie it back to your message of crime is up, homelessness is up. All these other countries are looking at the data and saying, well, hold on, let's put the pause on this. Let's explore this more, research more. We go deeper to remove any age limitation. Why are we incapable of recalibrating.
Certain issues become woven into the fabric of a political party. And I think in the view of a lot of well-meaning people, they feel they're doing the right thing. They feel that they are being more accepting of a group of people who have suffered a lot in this country, right? Have been brutalized in the shadows in this country. So,
Right.
so I think it's important to remember that it does actually come from a good place, but just because it's coming from a good place doesn't necessarily mean it's the right option or the right way to move forward. And so, like, I think it's important to have laws protecting transgender people from discrimination in housing, in the workplace, and all of that.
Agree with you.
But I also think that the transgender community is not the same as the gay community, or passing something to codify and protect gay marriage. That's very different from some of the more complicated, nuanced issues that arise when it comes to gender, right? So I really think that women have been totally erased from this conversation, and if anyone raises their hand and says, like, actually, I'd like to be part of this conversation because this does impact me, oh, I mean, they're harassed pretty viciously. So much so that they might start off as liberal and all of a sudden find themselves, you know, rubbing shoulders with the extreme right. Because the right's going to open their arms and say, come to us, we welcome you.
What's happening.
Yeah.
And when you feel like you've been attacked by your people,
Right.
and now you're standing out there in the cold wondering what happened, and then the right opens the door, and I fight very hard within myself to stay in the center. I see the problems on the right. I have my whole life. I don't judge anyone for their opinions. I don't demonize anybody for those opinions. I've grown out of it like you did. I thought I was a better person. I've learned my lesson. I will mea culpa it. But when Sean Hannity and Jesse Waters are going to have a conversation about a hearing on health at the Capitol, and CNN tells me I'm anti-science, I mean, my God, where do you think I'm going to lean?
Yeah.
What do you think you're doing?
I think a lot of people find themselves in that position, and it's uncomfortable, right? Because if you are proceeding through life with an understanding of what your morals, your principles, and values are, then you won't really get sucked into a party you don't belong in. The first time I was pretty viciously demonized by my own side was when I opened up about, you know, I've talked about this so many times, I feel bad repeating it, but it was really that big moment for me, right?
Yeah, mine was the you're a fat shamer because I said I didn't want Lizzo to die of diabetes. I was like, wait, when did we start celebrating?
And now she's getting healthy. Like, now she's working out.
I watched them attack her, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for it to start. Or say she's on Ozempic. I saw that happen.
Oh,
she's
I
like,
saw
I'm
that
not
too.
on Ozempic. I was like, can we just...
No, I'm
Cool.
proud of her. She wants.
Same.
We should celebrate people wanting to better themselves and better their lives. Instead, there's like this effort to like basically tell people you're fine the way you are. You don't need to change a thing, even if that thing is like slowly killing you. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
It's the empathy you talked about.
Yeah.
And Gad Saad, did you ever read The Parasitic Mind? Oh my God, Anna, you must read it. Gad Saad calls it suicidal empathy, and it's dysregulated empathy. But I interrupted you. Tell me about your moment of when they went after you the first time.
Yeah, so it was so weird because it was unexpected, like super unexpected. I in 2022, it was around March. I was walking my dog. It was not quite dark yet, but the sun was setting. As I'm walking my dog, I see these two guys that were just kind of like moving around weirdly, you know, they seemed kind of manic, and their clothes were tattered, so I knew that they were probably homeless, and I also knew that they're probably on something just based on like the twitchy way they were acting. But living in LA, I mean, there's homeless people everywhere, right? So I've never had problems. I didn't think anything of it. But as I was bending down to pick up my dog's mess, one of the guys like grabs me by my hips, and he had an erection.
Oh God.
And just starts like humping me. And I didn't know what to do. Like, I was terrified. I didn't have a weapon on me. Like, I had no way of defending myself. I didn't know how far it was gonna go because it's two guys. I'm by myself with my little dog. It was one of the most terrifying things ever, because I'm pretty good at defending myself. In that moment, I just knew there was no option.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And luckily, he stopped, and they just laughed at me and walked away as they were laughing at me. And so there was the fear, and then the humiliation, and weirdly shame. Like I felt ashamed for some reason, and it was awful. And it was really taking a toll on my mental health because I have to walk my dog, right? So at least 2 or 3 times a day, I'm going outside kind of scared. And so I opened up about this on the show, not really thinking much of it. And before I knew it, I'm starting to get these messages, and it's like really, really harsh stuff. And it's about how you are painting a picture of the homeless community. You know, how could you be like this? You know, these are your unhoused neighbors and they need help. A few people accused me of being racist when I had never disclosed the race of the individuals who did this to me. And in fact, they were white. And so like when they started accusing me of being racist, I'm like, wait a minute, why are you assuming that the people who did this?
Of course.
Yeah, like, you might have a problem.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that woke me up. That woke me up because I'm like, oh my God.
They eat their own, Mama.
Some of the people,
They eat their own on the extreme left.
and some of the people that I've associated myself because I thought these are the good people.
Yep.
These are the ones who don't treat others differently based on their skin colors. No, they definitely have stereotypes in their head and are totally blind to the fact that they have those stereotypes and in fact go around accusing others of being bad actors when they themselves need to do the work. You know, this phrase they like to say a lot, do the work. Do the work and ask yourself, why did you have that stereotype in your head?
Oh my gosh, did you see, you said you watched a little bit of the interview I did with Matt. Did you see the video where the guy's going around saying our voter ID laws racist? And all the white people say, yes, they are. And when they're asked why, they're like, well, you know, they'd have to know how to use a computer. Well, they'd have to have data plan. Well, you know, they don't have anywhere to go with this ID. And I thought, it doesn't get more.
You don't see it.
Does not get more racist than you thinking a person of color has nowhere to go with their ID, doesn't have the money for a data plan to figure out how to find the DMV on the web. And
that they're incapable.
Yes.
They're incapable of doing basic things.
Talk about racist.
Yeah, it's disgusting. And so, like, I see this now for what it is. And while these very big issues and laws exist, we're having conversations about, like, microaggressions. And I'm like, no, what about aggressions? Like, what about the kinds of things that you are saying that disempower people? Like, if you're a elementary school Black student, and you're hearing incessantly from your teachers, from politicians, that the system is against you, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
100%.
Right? And I don't want to message that to kids, and I don't want to message that to any community that's been historically marginalized. I think everyone is capable of greatness, and so I want to get back to a party that actually wanted to lift people up rather than tell people you're failing and you will continue to fail because that's just how the system is.
I also think that is a trick. And I'm not sure who's playing it, but here's why. Because I've watched more athletes and more musicians, people who sell tickets and t-shirts, alienate audiences that aren't of color. And I told my daughter, who's Black, this is not my son, but my daughter, I was like, do not play this game. You are the people's champion if you get into a position where you are a champion. You make music for everybody and anybody who will listen. Invite everybody into your world. I'm sorry, but Black America is 13% of the population. What about the other 87% of the money? Just the money, just the success piece that you're leaving on the table. Like, we worship Serena Williams in our house. She's not a Black kid's champion. She's our champion.
Yeah, 100%. I mean,
she's our athlete.
That's how I feel. Like, that's how I felt when I was watching the Olympics and I saw the U.S., gymnastics team totally kick ass. And these are Black women kicking ass, and I didn't look at them as Black women.
No.
I saw them as Americans.
They're our champions.
Yes, I felt proud of our American identity. And that's the thing. I could be totally wrong about this because I was young and we tend to romanticize our childhoods and everything. But I grew up in the 90s. And I just feel like I don't know. I just feel like we weren't as obsessed with dividing ourselves into these little groups based on our skin color or our gender identity, or, you know, like there was some, like a modicum of seeing everyone as Americans.
We tried to get, my generation was the love is love generation. Our whole thing was do away with the labels.
Yep.
And now people are outraged if you get their label wrong. And you just start to think, am I a dinosaur?
Yeah, I know. I feel that all the time now, right? Like, I don't think that pursuing... okay, so colorblindness, I don't think is the right way of describing what colorblindness was attempting to do, because race exists, obviously, and it's very visible, and it is what it is. It's not like you're erasing race. You literally can't do that. However, that whole project was about seeing the humanity in everyone before seeing anything else. And I want people to have that kind of mindset, and I think that the way that we talk about identity in this country today hyper fixates on everything that makes us different from other groups, and ironically I think leads to more bubbles and more segregation in some ways.
Completely.
Right? And I think that the whole notion of microaggressions makes it difficult to have conversations with people, right? Because it's like, oh, I mean...
It's just a very manipulative way of shutting down any dialogue, in my opinion.
Yeah, because you're afraid that you're going to make a microaggression. I mean, it's so small that you don't even realize you're doing it, right?
I can't. When I was a kid, my mom used to teach me, obviously, you see color, you see if somebody's gay, and I didn't know I was gay as a kid, but I knew we had a designer, or this guy Scott who was gay, whatever. And my mom would teach me to seek out the differences, but then appreciate what was special about it. So she would say, you know, if there are couples that are gay, they might be adopting babies that need good homes. And we weren't a religious household, but my mom would say, like, maybe that's why nature has more gay people, because as a child, I'm like, ooh, that's weird. Or if a person was black, she's like, I want you to think of humanity as one big team of superheroes with special powers.
Time is
then
money,
black people
friend.
can better
Have a
tolerate the
go.
sun. And people who live in the Andes, you know, they can exist with less oxygen. Like, she would teach me all these cool things about superfoods from different cultures and all these things that our bodies had adapted to do differently in different parts of the world. And I always saw it as, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Our differences.
Hell yeah.
And together,
yes,
we make a whole. And so it wasn't about, like, I'm gay, or I'm this, or I'm that. I saw the differences. But the label did exactly what you're talking about. It felt divisive, always.
I mean, it depends on how you react or how you treat that label, right? If that is front-loaded into every conversation, and that's what you are kind of like forced to hyper-fixate on when you're having a conversation with someone or a group of people, well, then